versus Wrestling on the Edge of the World.
Kia ora and welcome to SPW Bleeding Edge, the podcast about wrestling on the edge of the world. Tyler King, David Dunn, back with you again for another episode. David, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Tyler, and of course we should send our thanks, as we always do, to Dead Agents for that title track. Love to hear them playing us into the podcast every week. Thanks so much, lads.
Very good call, David. Make sure you check out Dead Agents on Spotify for some great tunes. But what have you been up to since our last episode, David?
Well, a few things, Tyler, but I guess the most exciting one is I've been checking out Night 2 of SPW Fight for Gold because it's available now on SPW On Demand, and let me tell you, the video holds up to all of my memories I have from watching this show live in the building. A cracking event, very fun for the rewatch.
Yeah, a couple of pretty epic matches on that one, and one of which is pretty relevant to our guest today. So a huge guest on today's episode, which if you've clicked the link and seen the image, you'll know who I'm talking about. It's New Japan Pro Wrestling's Toa Henare. Huge friend to SPW. It was great to have him back for Fight for Gold. We've had him over for Fight Nights. He was on the original show. He was one of the first people when we announced this podcast to publicly say, hey guys, let me know when you want me to come on. And so I thought there was no better time than coming off of that epic match with Slade Mercer at Fight for Gold to get Toa Henare on the bleeding edge.
Yes, Henare, a man I've known for a number of years now, seen him rise up through the ranks of New Zealand wrestling, and it's really incredible to see what he's doing now. Big things in Japan. We were very lucky to speak to him. So let's throw to the interview now with Toa Henare.
Toa Henare, welcome to the Bleeding Edge. Great to talk to you, dude. How are you doing?
Kia ora, bro. Good to hear from you again, even though I just saw you guys 2 weeks ago. I'm good. Just stuck in quarantine, the new normal.
Yeah, we thank you for coming on the podcast, but we understand that you do have plenty of time on your hands now, spending a lot of time in the quarantine hotel. What's it been like having to go through this process, traveling between New Zealand and Japan?
Oof, it's easier this time around. Legit. The first time around was a big surprise. First time in Japan wasn't too bad, but it was still limiting. First time back in New Zealand, I almost died, man. It was just prison. And I know it's all for like the greater good, but man, I was struggling in there. But it's just the life, you know. You got to be willing to do what nobody else is willing to do what you want to do.
How many times now have you traveled back and forth between Japan and New Zealand since all this COVID stuff has kicked off?
Oh man, so March 16th last year, I did self-isolation in New Zealand, so that's one, and then back in Japan for round 2, then once more in New Zealand for round 3. Now I'm on round 4 back in Japan.
Far out. So do you notice much of a difference in terms of like the restrictions and that sort of thing surrounding COVID as you jump between countries?
Yeah, man, so much. I think most people would expect New Zealand to be the more liberal of the two countries, but it's completely the opposite. The quarantine facilities there, like you're not allowed to do anything. Like you're not allowed to sweat. You're not allowed to drink water outside your room. You're not allowed to exercise or like be outside for longer than 30 minutes, and you have to book your spot. So it's pretty tough, man. It's like the toughest 2 weeks I ever had in my life was in that quarantine the last time. But I mean, that's why New Zealand has only 1 or 2 cases now, whereas Japan, they got like thousands of cases. But I mean, it's quite normal here. They're used to SARS. They're used to all the big disasters happening to Japan, so they know how to react real calmly to things.
Yeah, fair enough. Like you said, we just saw you a few weeks ago at SPW Fight for Gold. It was great to have you. You had an incredible match with Slade Mercer. And of course, you're no stranger to SPW. You're a part of the first ever event in 2015. Just wanted to ask, in terms of your career, how long had you been wrestling at that point? And what did you think of those first few SPW shows?
The shows were great. It was like, at the time, I think none of us realized how big the step forward was. What SPW and what you were aiming for. No, I don't think we understood at the time. To us, it was just another company. But I mean, even I've been hearing about SPW from the guys in the UK. I've been hearing about SPW from the guys in Australia. So it was massive. It's massive, and it's still growing. In terms of my wrestling, at that point in time, I was about 8 years in, training with IPW and stuff. But even before that, I was amateur wrestling. So I count the start of my career per se in amateur wrestling. I wrestled for Dilworth College all throughout school. Just always had the MMA, always had the wrestling, always had the Muay Thai on the side, you know.
So I guess in terms of the kind of wrestlers that were around in New Zealand at the time, you were towards the more experienced end.
So at the time, I thought, yes. At the time, 8 years, I was like, oh man, I'm an 8-year veteran. Then I got overseas and realized, man, I'm still a rookie. So even 8 years in New Zealand, couldn't measure up to like 3 months on tour. Not even wrestling, just like young boying at the side on the ring. That I learned more in that few weeks or that few months than I did in 8 years wrestling there. And it's not anything to do with the quality. I think it's more just in New Zealand you're wrestling once a month, whereas on the road you're wrestling every single day, like 5, 6, 7 days a week. So it's just that level of, not the level, the intensity of the experience that you get is the big difference maker. And I mean, most of us like that you're talking about, the guys like Niwa, guys like Trev, who else was in that group? But that sort of group there, we didn't know how hard it was on the pro scenes until we got here.
Going back again to those first few shows in 2015, I remember shortly after the Queenstown one, you got me to make you a little video package as you were preparing to head overseas and kind of take on the wrestling world. And it felt like the next thing I knew, you had been signed by New Japan Pro Wrestling. So tell us that story. How did you go from living and wrestling in New Zealand for the likes of SPW to moving to the NJPW dojo in Japan?
I actually knew in that not the first SPW show, the second one that was in Queenstown. I actually knew that I had the callback for New Japan. I did the big tryout the year before, and straight after the tryout, they told me, okay, we don't have a spot for you yet, so you didn't make this trial, but when it comes up, we'll give you a call. So I knew I was just waiting for that call. So I was like, hey, I got 3 or 4 months, maybe I'll just try and go UK and Ireland and USA. So I tried to squeeze in as much as I could before I got the call. I was actually in Florida. I was supposed to go to the Performance Center. This is an exclusive story. I was invited by the Bushwhackers to go get them check me out at the Performance Center. But Fale gave me the call the night before and said, hey, you got a spot in the dojo, but you have to come now. So there was like a 2, 3, 4 hour period where I couldn't sleep and I had to make a decision. But I think I made the right decision in the end, coming to Japan.
I think you did too. Absolutely. It's paid off in a big way. What can you tell us about when you get to New Japan and you're living in the dojo and your duties as what's been termed as a young lion with New Japan Pro Wrestling? Because that Japanese, that system is so different to breaking into wrestling anywhere else in the rest of the world.
I mean, that's the belief, is that it's so different from everywhere else in the world. But to be honest, it's not so much the culture or the style. It's just it's old school. Back in the day, you couldn't go to a school and then get broken in professionally. You had to know someone. You had to know a wrestler, an established wrestler, to get you in, or you come up through sports like MMA or football, kickboxing or something like that. So like I never really understood the whole like, oh, it's a different system, because it's when you look at the history of wrestling, this is sort of the way that things got started. Rather than, it wasn't until Lance Storm actually came across with his wrestling academy, his wrestling school, that the whole like academy style production of wrestlers came to be. But I mean, it's awesome in the dojo. I love that it's embedded in Japanese culture, the whole like samurai martial arts culture. It's very similar to judo, jujitsu. Wake up, cooking, cleaning, clean the mats, clean the gym, say hi to your senpais, do all the washing, bath, everything, man. It's like you eat, sleep, and shit wrestling when you're in the dojo. But I mean, I can't think of a better life to live for someone that wants to be a wrestler than living in that lifestyle. Can you? Can you tell me a better way to live?
I cannot. It sounds incredible.
I mean, it also makes you understand, and it makes you proud of the fact that, man, I did all of this work that 90% of people fail to do. 90% of people that get to the dojo or get to these academies in the professional sense don't make it through. It takes that crazy ass 10%, the nuts guys like us, to get through.
One of the most intriguing things about the role of the young lion that I find, like, I guess because it's the only one you actually see from the outside, is when they're at ringside for the massive New Japan events, and you get to kind of help with crowd control and that sort of thing, and watch those big matches. What are some of your memories from that time as in your time as a young lion?
There's so many. I think the very first tour that I was ringside for was the G1 2016, and that was one of the best pound for pound, technically one of the best G1s ever in history. And it had all the Noah guys, it had all the New Japan guys, it had like Kenny and stuff. The one thing that stood out that year was Kenny and Okada. So when Kenny kicked out of the Rainmaker, I just lost my nut when I saw that. And people don't really know, but I was Okada's apprentice when I was a young boy. So I was the guy that cleaned all his gear. I was the one that folded up his robes and put his giant necklace in. And it's just all of the little stuff. But in return, he paid for my dinner and paid for my like food and sometimes clothes. And he's real good. They take care of you that way. But just seeing Kenny kick out of Okada's finisher, I was like, holy hell, man! Like it's emotion like that you don't see too much of in this day and age of professional wrestling. And yeah, it's just intense. Plus, there was about 30,000 people in the crowd as well, so that just like amplified everything.
How long were you training in the dojo and doing all the young lion stuff before you were actually able to have matches on the events, or did that happen quite quickly?
For me, the normal way of doing it. Another thing that the public aren't really aware of is that before a Japanese young boy actually gets to ringside, he has to finish 1 year in the dojo. But I came in May, and I came to ringside in in August. So it was May, June, July, August. So my one was 4 months before I got ringside. I did quite well in the training. I was training 2-3 times a day. It was pretty intense. So like the whole training at 9 until like 2 p.m. every single day. Plus I was doing runs in the morning and training at night. So I sort of got fast tracked in that sense. But at the same time, I was in the dojo longer. So I was 2.5 years as a dojo, say they call like apprentice is what they call it. So there's like heaps of different levels. There's like the Renshusei, the apprentice, and then the young boy, and then young lion, and then full-time wrestler after that, which is where I've just come to now.
During that stage where you were breaking in as a young lion, having these opening card matches for New Japan Pro Wrestling, you suffered an injury to your Achilles tendon. How did you overcome that? How did you rehab that? Because, for me, as someone on the outside looking in, you hear about that and you think that's a career ender. But for you, it certainly wasn't. How did you get through it?
Yeah, it's a very rare injury in wrestling because you got the high top boots. Your Achilles is usually protected, but actually I'm not one to blame your genetics on everything, but both my parents and both sides of my family snapped their Achilles. So I was just genetically predisposed to having it happen. And I was there both times that my mum and dad snapped their Achilles. So it was like coming full circle. But I think I had 9 months off. I got sent back to New Zealand and I had to do my rehab there. And just having to teach yourself how to walk again is like trippy, man. I was in hospital for 5 weeks before I came back and then just 9 months of rehab after that. So it was pretty hard, but I mean, it made me more aware athletically of like what I could do, where my boundaries were, and obviously my athleticism's gone way better since then. So it was a blessing in disguise. I got to come home, so that was another plus, but it sort of extended the time that I was a young lion. So I don't think I would have been a young lion as long if I didn't get injured.
That makes sense. How did the transition work then for you to officially make the move from young lion to a fully fledged member of the New Japan roster?
This is the hard question to answer for me because a normal Japanese young lion, after he finishes his young lion training, he gets sent on an excursion, whether that's to Mexico or the UK or the USA, sometimes Puerto Rico. But I didn't get that. I didn't get sent away. And the reason was because I got injured. So I had already been sent away to recover from my injury. So I didn't really have that nice transition in and out and then back into New Japan from being a young lion. So one of the hard things to come to grips with is that some fans and some other wrestlers still consider me a young lion even now, because I didn't go away and sort of reinvent myself like usually happens with the Japanese boys. But I mean, we still got time, and I'm still hustling. I'm one of the most active wrestlers in the world. Pre-COVID, I had like more matches than almost everybody else in the world. So that's something to be proud of. I know I've always been a grinder. I've always been a hard worker. And I know I could last longer than anyone for longer.
Definitely something to be proud of, man. And I was watching the Wrestle Kingdom when you were on the Battle Royal, and you came out with the Toa Henare name and the new gear, and I could tell that this was kind of you being elevated above the young lion status. How did that feel to you on that night?
That was nervous, man. That was my first Wrestle Kingdom. I think that was 2018, I believe, the start of the year. But I honestly, I just recovered from the Achilles. I got thrown into the World Tag League with Makabe. Then it honestly felt like it happened all in a week. It was real hard. But still, I haven't really, for my own thinking, I still think I'm at that lower level. I know I've come a long way and I've done a lot since being a young lion, but in terms of like actually accomplishing stuff, I don't think I'm there yet. But I know I'll just keep working, and I know I'll get there eventually. I'm a hustler, man. David Dunn, you know me. I grind. I grind. I'm not a naturally talented person at anything. I wasn't really athletic too much as a kid, but I was a grinder. I could outlast people. I was a survivor. That's what I'm about.
Absolutely. I've seen you grind over a number of years to get where you are now. This might be another hard question then, but what will it take for you to feel like to be confident that you have made the transition up and you are an established bona fide main roster member?
I mean, the easy answer would be, when the fans come and support me. That'll be the easy answer, but that's not the easy answer. When I begin winning, when I get titles, I think it's only hard because I didn't lose very often until I came to Japan. Until I came here, I wasn't a loser. You know me. I won amateur comps, I won MMA comps, martial arts, submission wrestling, grappling. I've done it all, and I never really lost until I came to Japan. And that was always a hard pill to swallow, especially for the last few years. But I know I'm good enough. I know I could be a freaking star, and I mean, one of the things that gets left behind is that I'm the only full-time Maori professional wrestler in the world. So not only is it hard, but I've got a lot counting on it, and I've got a lot of responsibility to achieve more. You notice I don't have any tattoos yet. I'm probably the only Maori dude without tattoos, and that's because I myself, I think I've still got things to accomplish before I'd be able to put those on me.
Yeah, just referring to that, we saw at Fight for Gold just a couple of weeks ago that haka you did on your entrance. So we know that you're a man that's incredibly proud of your heritage. How important is it to you to be repping your culture on the world stage in such a huge way?
Yeah, man. I mean, like, it didn't really hit me until like the last year or the last 2 years. Just, oh man, there was Niwa when he was with CMLL, but when he left Mexico, it was like, oh man, I'm the only Maori left. Like, I can't give up. I can't just go back. I have to stay here and I have to grind it out, because Maori don't really get these opportunities very often. I mean, people around the world, in the UK and Ireland and America, they all think I'm Samoan. They don't know the difference between a Samoan, a Tongan, and a Maori. So it's huge, and you guys have always been welcoming to that part of my culture, like the pride that I have in that. So I thank SPW for always being cool with that.
And speaking of SPW, you made your way back in 2018 for a one-off appearance at a Fight Nights event. And it's pretty cool that you're able to still do that while you're competing for New Japan. Do you enjoy being able to come back, do shows in New Zealand, and kind of keep an eye on the scene?
Yeah, man, it's one of the big benefits of working for New Japan as opposed to other countries, is that not only do they give you time to go home and see your family and wind down, they actually pay for your travel. So they take care of you, man. Flying to and from New Zealand, accommodation, travel, everything, man. And just being able to come home and like sort of not build the scene, but guide the scene with people like Will. It was an awesome match, man. 2018, that was one of my favorite singles matches. And man, he could, just because he brought it. Like mid match, I remember, I think I slapped him in the face, and then he slapped me in the face, and he looked at me like, "Yeah, come on, I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready." So it was like, man, that's awesome. And having the opportunity to come back home and see like the new guys on the block, like the guys where I was before, the Niwa, the Travis, the Henare of now, it's awesome to see. And I mean, we got heaps of new guys coming up. Like Jamie. Jamie's the man. He trains with me when I'm back in New Zealand.
It has only been a couple of weeks since we last saw you because you were back for this year's Fight for Gold weekend. How did that come about that you were around and that you were put on the Fight for Gold card?
Don't get angry at me for this one, but I didn't even know there was a card. I already booked the tickets to Queenstown. I was going to take a 1 week holiday because if you know me, you know I don't like holidays. So it was like a training holiday. I was going to train twice a day, and then SPW management called me. They're like, "Hey, are you free on this day?" I'm like, "Yeah." Not only am I free, I'm in Queenstown that day. So it wasn't a. It was meant to be, put it that way. And Richie picked me up from Queenstown. I know everybody hates Professor Palmer, but I got a soft spot for that guy. So shout out to the bro. But yeah, it was meant to be. And they said, "Hey, what do you think about a match against Slade Mercer?" Without even thinking, I was like, "Yep, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go." It's massive, bro. And like you see it, I'll probably see it on the video, but I didn't realize how bloody big he was because I've never stood next to him before until the middle of the ring. And then I looked up, and this guy like looks like he's 10 meters tall, and I was like, "Holy shit, what the hell's happening?" But yeah, it was great. It was great, great opportunity. And he's a top-notch guy as well. He's an All Japan star too. So it's not often that you get that in New Zealand, in the world, let alone New Zealand, let alone in Invercargill.
Yes, that was a treat. Absolutely. We were very lucky to see that in Invercargill. And as you mentioned, it's quite rare for you to be able to have singles matches these days. You're mainly a tag team wrestler when it comes to your matches in New Japan. How was that to get the chance to go, toe to toe, one on one? And how does it differ having a singles match, aside from the obvious with there being more people involved in a tag match?
I've been predominantly a tag wrestler, and the reason why is because the World Tag League is like one of my main moments to shine in a year, if that makes sense. I mean, everyone in Japan, we all aim for the singles match, but Japanese style, you sort of have to earn your singles match, which I did. Last year, I was supposed to be in the New Japan Cup, but then the lockdown hit and all the events got cancelled. So it was supposed to be a main event, Kuroko and Hall. The Before Slade, believe it or not, the last singles match I had was 2019, October 2019, against Takagi, who soon later went on to get the Never Championship belt. But it's special. Like a lot of people just throwing away all these matches out of nowhere, singles matches that don't mean anything. But when it's two guys that have gone around the world for years and years and years and then come back, I think that's pretty special. And honestly, thank SPW for that opportunity to fight Slade. Um, yeah, man. But I think I just got used to the tag team matches. I'm not saying I hate them. I love tag team matches. Most of my matches are tags. I'm always in the World Tag League. But I hope to have more singles matches, and I hope to crush New Japan Cup this year, and then G1 Climax, and then hopefully Wrestle Kingdom. I mean, every single person wants a match at Wrestle Kingdom, but that's the big goal. But just this singles matches are special because if you lose, you got no one else to blame but yourself. If you win, you got no one else to thank but yourself. And it's just I love one-on-one fights. You know me, David Dunn. I'll fight at the drop of a dime.
And then you mentioned the World Tag League up until this point having been your moment to shine. So let's talk about that a little bit more. You were part of a team known as Henare alongside, quite literally one of the all-time greats in Hiroshi Tanahashi. What's it like being around him? You've come from this system where you're a young boy, you're at ringside, you're watching the matches of guys like Tanahashi, and now you're in the ring with him, you're on a team with him, you're competing in this tournament together. Isn't that surreal to you at all? And just tell us a little bit about hanging out with and working with Tanahashi.
Oh, it's buzzing, man. I remember in 2005, I got bloody suspended from school. And I came home and turned on the TV. I was pretty pissed off that I got suspended from school for fighting. But I turned it on, and it's Hiroshi Tanahashi. on the screen. And I'm like, man, this guy's cool. And then fast forward to the year before last year, 2019, tagging with him. It's like, wow. Not only did I used to watch this guy, but he's like the biggest star in Japan and one of the biggest stars around the world. And it's just like, I learned so much from him, not just as a wrestler, like as a dude as well, like as a guy. He's so respectful. He's just a real life good dude, just oozes good energy. Japanese people love him, foreign fans love him. He's just like, I call him the real life Goku. He is just Goku in real life. He walks down the street and everyone's like, wow, that's a cool guy, even if they don't know he wrestles. So he's just that guy. He's awesome.
And this year at Wrestle Kingdom, this was a moment we called out on commentary at Fight for Gold, because it feels like such a huge moment for you, returning after this big break due to COVID in the pre-show Rumble match, and you threw out Yuji Nagata and Minoru Suzuki. Did that feel like a huge deal for you when that all went down?
Just to put things into context, before I got to New Japan, my favorite wrestler in the world was Yuji Nagata. I spoke about the reason why I wanted to come to New Japan, and him and Suzuki were two of the men who I wanted to be like. They're both MMA guys. They're both amateur guys. They both have a fighting background. They're both New Japan as well. So these two, it was like huge. These guys are like my idols. These two guys, toughest guys in the world. They are still, to this day, the only guys that run around the whole arena before the show. Suzuki's in the ring, skipping for 15 minutes every single day before a match. Yes, I mean, tremendous amount of respect for both of these guys. And just from my background, from my goal when I was a kid watching these guys, I'm like, man, that moment was massive. And you see it on my face after I eliminate them. I'm like, holy shit, did I just eliminate the two guys that I respect the most in this business? So it's buzzy. Like, you work so hard that your idols become your rivals, you know? And I mean, that was the case at Wrestle Kingdom. But hopefully, man, one day getting a singles match with both of those guys will be massive. And I can't wait for it.
A singles match with either of those two would obviously be incredible. And you touched on it before, talking about hoping to be part of the New Japan Cup, the G1, all the tournaments this year. But in general, what sort of goals do you set yourself for New Japan Pro Wrestling in this year? You know, you talked about those singles matches that you were supposed to have with Ishii, the one you'd had with Shingo Takagi. It seems like you've got an interest in sort of the style that goes around with the Never Openweight Championship. What sort of aspirations do you have that you hope to have achieved in New Japan by the end of the year?
I mean, well, I haven't made a secret about it since the day that I had my debut in 2016 in September. I said that day, like, the reason I came to New Japan was because of that strong style aspect. And the Never represents that specifically Japanese aspect of wrestling, or Japanese style, catch wrestling style, striking style. And I mean, it's been my goal since I got here to win that belt. Obviously, there's other belts as well, but everyone's fighting over the Intercontinental. But I genuinely think that the Never belt has been elevated, and like, no, I think Tanahashi's got it now. That's massive. It's like everyone looks at the IWGP as the heavyweight champion, as the top championship, Intercontinental as the second, and then they before they'd think, oh, the Never's the third belt. But now that Takagi's elevated it, now that Tanahashi's got it, and it's like that's the title people want now. And I've always wanted that belt. That's the belt that I've always wanted. But not just that, that's just my goals in New Japan, man. I want to be known as the top openweight wrestler in the world. And like, I truly believe that I could get there. And I know you guys know me. I'll take on the biggest guy. I'll take on the smallest guy. I don't care. I'll go out fighting, and I'll go out dying if it means I get that belt.
There's been a lot of discussion around the world that the forbidden door has been opened, and we've seen a lot of movement between New Japan Pro Wrestling, AEW, and Impact Wrestling. What do you make of this relationship that's being fostered between these companies? And is there anyone on their rosters that interests you? Do you have any aspirations to walk through the forbidden door?
To be completely honest, one, I didn't think the door was forbidden, and two, I didn't even know they were working on anything. Um, but just as one of the boys, as one of the wrestlers, it's just cool. It's good for us as wrestlers that we have so many options. Um, I won't say who, but I've been approached by other ones as well. But New Japan's where my allegiance lie. It's where my passions lie, and it's where I want to make a stand. But if you're talking about other guys, like I'd love to get back with Kenny again. Another guy in AEW, I'm not sure if this is correct, but Miro, I think he's in AEW. I'd love to fight that guy, man. And there's Wardlaw, I think his name is. He's another one. I don't really watch Impact, but Ken Shamrock is one of my idols, man. I'd love to go with him. And then to add to your list, the GCW Bloodsport. I mean, I'd love to get on one of those cards.
All of those sound very tantalizing. And yeah, hopefully some of them pan out.
Yeah, they will. I know. I don't know anyone that's coming here. They've probably got some surprises down the line, but I mean, the potential matchups everywhere are massive.
Back in Auckland, you've recently opened Warrior Wrestling. What are you hoping to achieve with that?
Oh, we're taking it to the next level, man. Wrestling, like what SPW is doing, like is massive. It's massive, and I've told you, you guys are the best in New Zealand so far. The next step that we need to look at is the actual technical side of the wrestling. Because like I understand that it's not a full-time job for a lot of people in New Zealand, but it can be. And I'm proof of that. Back in 2015, I was making enough money on wrestling to have it like take care of me full time. So I was wrestling every weekend. I was selling merchandise and stuff every weekend. There's a lot of people sell New Zealand short. A lot of people this week, I mean, fans have come up to me and told me, I don't think money can be made in wrestling in New Zealand. And I looked them dead in the face and I said, you're wrong, because I did it. I know what it's like. I know the possibility of what we can make. And not only that, I sent him a snippet of Steve Rickard. I'm like, you're telling me New Zealand's too small for this to happen? Go look at what happened in the 70s. And I'm sure that was a long time ago. Yeah, that's fine. But I mean, there's a hole in the market. There's not much family entertainment in New Zealand for families to go look at. There's a lot of MMA. There's a lot of boxing. There's a lot of kickboxing. There's a lot of rugby. But if you're looking for like a family getaway for a Saturday night or a Friday night, I think wrestling is the perfect thing to fill that up. And I think with the international experience and what I've learned overseas in New Zealand, in UK, Ireland, and America, I think we can do it with all like hardworking guys like yourselves, the SPW management. They're real good. Hopefully, we could work together and do like a North South show. Hint, hint, wink, wink.
So while we've got you here, have you got anything coming up you'd like to plug for Warrior Wrestling?
For the next big show is Wanganui Showdown. So that's on Wanganui, April 30th. That'll be quite a big show. I think it's Wanganui War Memorial Hall, which sits about 1,000 people. We're aiming for, near that. But the big thing about it is that it's a two-hitter. So it's we're doing Wanganui on the April 30th, and the day after we're going down to Wellington to do a show there, which hasn't been announced yet. So you guys are having the exclusive offer of it. But I mean, we've got all the biggest and the best guys. You notice like a lot of the guys that come to Warrior are your more heavyweight sort of guys. So like Shane and Rough Guts, Chalky, Niwa, me, Slade, like everybody. I mean, I'm just going to say it. You can't call yourself a heavyweight if you're not over 100 kilos. I don't care what you say. I don't care what your belt says. If you are not over 100 kilos, you are not a heavyweight. And so we got a big distinction between heavyweight and cruiserweight. But I mean, if a cruiserweight wants to go up against someone like Ruben de Jong, then good luck, cuz. But yeah, it's just that bringing that next level of intensity to New Zealand wrestling. More bring back the competition aspect, move away from the whole glitz and the glamour, and just get back to grassroots, no crap, no bullshit, just wrestling, competitive wrestling.
Well, thank you for that exclusive there, and best of luck with your upcoming events for Warrior Wrestling, and of course your events in New Japan Pro Wrestling. So for all of our listeners out there, where can they follow you on social media to keep up with everything that is going on for Toa Henare and Warrior Wrestling?
Thank you, brother. No, it's always good. I love you guys because you guys are the guys that have always been engaged. You guys are just there for the benefit of New Zealand wrestling as a whole. So I'm always indebted to you guys, and I thank you guys for always welcoming me, always offering me matches when I'm back, and always keeping in touch. Everyone else in New Zealand at Henare NZ on all Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. Obviously, it sounds like I've come a long way since 2015, since that first SPW show. But I swear to God that this is just beginning, man. You're only seeing the start of Henare. There's still so much more to go.
And we cannot wait to see it. Thank you very much for spending the time to talk to us. I know you've got plenty of time in quarantine, but all the same, thank you so much for chatting to us, man. It's been a pleasure. Always awesome to talk to you.
Thank you, bro. It's always good. And if you guys need anything or need any help, need me to beat anyone up, just give me a call.
There you have it. David Dunn and myself have our own personal bodyguard, Toa Henare, offering his services. So Wrestle Cafe, watch out, because we've got backup.
Big things coming for New Zealand wrestling with Warrior Wrestling holding events around the North Island and, of course, in Queenstown coming up April the 3rd. Tyler, we're heading back for Queenstown WrestleFest and that massive main event of the hooligan Marcus Cool versus the Savage Niwa. Are you excited?
I thought you were going to say big things coming for New Zealand wrestling. It's Wrestle Cafe versus the Bleeding Edge. It felt like that's where we were going, but no, I am incredibly excited for the Hooligan and Niwa Round 2 Queenstown WrestleFest. It's going to go off like it always does, and tickets are available now for that one on Event Finder.
Get on there, secure yourself a seat. You're not going to want to miss this one. It is going to be epic, and of course, plenty more matches to come. So if you want to be the first to find out about what's coming your way for Queenstown WrestleFest, make sure you're following us on social media at SP Wrestling NZ for those exclusive match announcements coming up as we get closer and closer to WrestleFest.
Yeah, it's always one of the coolest, most fun shows of the year. Make sure you go back to check out the previous ones at SPW On Demand. Also, last year's still available on TVNZ On Demand. So check that all out, and we will be back to talk more about Queenstown WrestleFest next time on The Bleeding Edge.